right, guys, welcome to this week's Grant Teach Me Something. I'm super happy about this. We are going to be doing a 3 steps to avoiding servicing nightmares, and I'm super glad to have along with me 2 people that I consider part of my inner circle, which, guys, if you don't have somebody who is
inner circle
is better than you are at everything that you do, that you can consider part of your inner circle, you need to really work towards that. But to my left, we have Mr. Paulo Dwyer. To my right, we have Mr. Mike Powell. What's up, guys?
Happy to be here, man. Excited.
Great. We're excited
Glad to have y'all. So we were talking about servicing, right? And everybody sitting up here has done a ton of notes in one way or another. Paul does a lot of land. You've done a lot of second liens too, right?
Yeah, we've done in the last 5 years. We've done about 100 second leads, and we've got a little bit away from that space right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're concentrating more on selling land and owner financing land.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we've done a lot of servicing.
And then what about you, Mike? Tell us a little bit about your background on.
We focus mostly on the owner finance side. We try to crank out as many as we can a year, and we do some flips and wholesales, kind of if they fall in our lap. But our main focus is on owner financing all the time.
That's awesome. So, what you're looking at here is 2 guys that I look up to a lot in what they've done, because you can always learn from the experience from people who have just been out there beast moding it, right? And when we were talking about servicing is one of those things that it can be really dangerous. I mean, you can really get screwed on servicing your own notes. You can get screwed by a bad servicer. And so, first of all, I guess, Mike, would you just describe to us what is servicing? I'm saying servicing a bunch, but what is that?
Servicing is when we create a note, we send it out of house to a third-party servicer, and they do all the escrows, cutting the checks back to the investors, yourself, refunds, anything like that, and then send you out a 1098 at the end of it. 1098?
Yeah, 1099.
1099, yeah, at the end of every year, so that you know
how much interest was
how
paid.
much interest, all that to the buyer of the property, and send you your check every month. Makes it very, very simple.
Right, exactly. So at its core, servicing, whether it's done through a third party or whether you're doing it in-house, servicing is just really the act of collecting the payment from your borrower and dispersing it where it needs to be dispersed, right? So if
and the most important thing I found about that is that the servicer kept me compliant.
Yeah, and that's huge because, and we're actually going to get into that. That's actually a good. Thanks for such the perfect leeway there, right? So we've got our 3 steps too, right? Avoiding the servicing nightmares. Well, step 1 is going to be the liabilities. We're going to talk about the liabilities that come with servicing and how you can kind of get around that. And when I say get around, I mean more in a way of complying in an easy fashion. Step 2 is going to be what was step 2? We had liability.
Picking the right servicer.
Picking the right servicer was going to be step 3.
Okay, and I don't know.
Well, y'all keep great notes.
We're really good at this.
We'll have it by the time we get to step 2. Let's roll.
Right. So step 1 is going to be the liability of this, of everything that we're doing on the servicing side, and that's exactly what you were talking about. Is compliance. A big part about that. You remember the numbers. What was the numbers? Because we talk a lot. So you're looking at. We're all on the board for the Texas 100, right? So you've seen us push a lot about Texas 100, as well as the Seller Finance Coalition on the national side, because we've got to have a voice in DC. We've got to have a voice in Austin. We've got to have a voice in each capital of each state to make sure that our needs are being reflected, that legislators aren't accidentally catching us in laws that they don't mean to catch us in, right?
And let's put in a real quick plug for Texas 100, if that's all right. So Texas 100, even though we're all on the board and we all do a ton of owner financing, it's not just for owner financers. We're looking to create a coalition both nationally and at the Texas level to protect everything as far as real estate investing goes. Because if we don't have a voice, we don't have a massive association like realtors do or some of these other groups. We're kind of all lone wolves and do our own thing. Right. But if we don't get this association together and working properly, a lot of what we do, whether you're wholesaling, flipping, owner financing, lease option, whatever you do, is eventually going to wind up on the table at the state or federal level. And we've seen how those laws can change us. Dodd-Frank, SAFE Act, a bunch of different ones. We've seen how those laws can change things, and we need to have a voice. So just real quick, it's not just for owner financers. Please, everybody, help us fight for our industry as investors as a whole.
And I think the biggest thing we've come to understand in the last 3 years is that these lawmakers are not out to get us. They don't know what they don't know. And really the biggest thing that we're doing by showing up and giving ourselves a voice is just explaining to them how our industry works and how they need to make laws to help the consumer and the end user.
Right,
So.
and that's been and we'll move on after, but that's really been a recurring theme, both in D.C. and on the state side, that we've seen these congressmen and senators, and they're all saying, guys, we want to know what's going on. Please invite me to your office. Please let me see what's going on out there, so that we can make legislation reflect what our people need, because we are the people.
And real quick, for everybody that is a part of Texas 100 already, one, we greatly appreciate you and your contribution. Some of you have given money, some of you have given time, some of you give both. And, pretty exciting that a bill that we helped work on this year we just got told that bill is going to wind up going to the House floor.
Right, it passed Senate already.
It passed
we'll see
Senate.
if it goes through the House.
It goes to the House. So,
and
a quick update: we are making a difference. What little bit we're doing now is already making a difference. So, if we can continue, it's going to have great things.
Right, absolutely. So let's scooch back from the Texas 100, scooch back from Seller Financing Coalition, which, by the way, just go to texas100.org or sellerfinancecoalition.org, right? Is it .org or .com? I don't know. Try both. I think it's .org.
If you do Texas 100, that goes both.
Okay, perfect. So, but with servicing, right? So we've got liabilities that we have to worry about. What was when we were, because the stats, we've talked to the commissioner of the SML and that kind of stuff. What were our stats?
And I don't remember the exact stats, but I'll give kind of a good idea. We were in Austin 2 years ago, and the commissioner of the SML, which is the Savings, Mortgage, and Loan Division, we were at a Texas 100 function. She got up to speak, and she said, and I'm going to use, once again, these aren't exact numbers, but she said we had 1,300 complaints last year about notes. So we had someone in the room raise their hand and say, well, can you break down kind of what those complaints were? She said, yeah, out of the 1,300, 1,230 of them were about servicing.
Right.
The other 60 were about the loan itself.
Right.
So that gives you a good idea. The massive amount of complaints at this level are about servicing.
Right.
So there's a huge liability in that servicing.
Which means that if you're servicing your own note, if you're collecting your own payments, you're putting yourself up for that risk, right? Now, you've heard me say this before. I will tell you, do not service your own note. Make the decision on if you're going to service in-house. Once you've done 40 or 50, then you're making enough that you can, kind of make that decision on whether you want to go one way or the other. But even at that, there's huge liability that's on the table there about like debt collection even.
Well, what I found was that, like you said, you have the choice. But kind of going back to what I said about the congressmen and women that we met, we don't know what we don't know. And what my main job is sourcing deals, making deals happen, and bringing money in. I don't have time to go back and sit down and
look
learn.
at all those laws, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But when I hand my notes over to a servicer, they're experts in the field of servicing. They know what they're doing, and they keep me compliant. I don't have to ask them why they're doing it. I know why they're doing it.
Right.
They're keeping me compliant.
And for the people who have 40, 50, like Grant was saying, at that point you kind of do have a choice to say, do I want to bring this in-house or whatnot? But we currently service way more than that for ourselves, but we actually went third party because of the liability, because one, we're not bonded, we're not insured for that specific thing.
Right.
Two, we've constantly had questions on people saying, well, I got my tax thing from you, and they don't understand an amortization fully sometimes. Usually they should if they're buying a home, but sometimes they might not fully understand the amortization. So they come in and say, well, what's the deal on this? If you're servicing your own stuff, you're the first person they're thinking that it's messing them up.
Right.
Hey, is this guy taking advantage of me because only this went to this and I had this late fee and whatnot? If you have a third party doing it, it takes you completely out of the equation. You say, hey,
Yeah.
Which an added benefit to that. So we talk about sub 2 a lot, right? Y'all know that I'm a big proponent of sub 2. It's how I built my portfolio. It's how I was able to buy houses without having money to buy houses. When you're buying a property, especially when you're getting started, when you're buying a property and you're asking somebody, hey, sell me your house, let me become the owner of it, but leave the debt in your name and just trust me, I'm going to pay it. And, it's a lot easier of a sell to say, look, we're going to use a third party, licensed and bonded individual who will collect the money and make sure that your note gets paid underneath. And that's a liability that gets removed from you as well, from your seller. Because sellers will get pissy. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen. A seller's going to forget 2 years after the fact that you saved their rear, got them out of foreclosure, caught
Bailed
them
them
out,
out.
made all their payments on time, fixed the house up, made the asset worth more. For whatever reason, they're going to forget that, and they're going to come back and they're going to be complaining later, right? If you give them any reason to complain that can fall on you, it's going to fall on you. And we need to be aware of that, right?
Well, and it also, on the liability, it helps out on the liability side, but I hear a lot of times that people are getting some of this money, and it takes the bad people out of the business. If we can keep pushing this and help people with this, there's a temptation where I just got $40,000 worth of payments in. I can pay all those next month and use this 40 grand to get one more deal.
Right.
And then I'll just pay them all next month. And it takes all that away. What's been sent to you is yours. Everything's been sent to the underlying, and everything's square. We're good to go.
Yeah,
it makes life very easy and takes that liability of yourself out.
Right.
Absolutely. One of the things when we talk about nightmares with liability is, man, freaking debt collection laws.
Yeah.
Do you know, if you don't sit down and read the debt collection laws, there's a lot of stuff that even I'm going to tell you, he's told me some of the stuff about debt collection laws, and I'm like, well, crap, I didn't know that. Like, fortunately, I wasn't doing it, but I was like, I totally would have done that, you know, right? Yeah. And one of the keys to being successful in this industry, and I think one of the keys that keeps all of us, those of us who have done a lot, share this in common, which we're all, in the positive term, a hustler, right? We're all willing to go out there and bust our butts and spend whatever time it takes to make sure that a deal is going down the way that the deal needs to go down.
Make sure we're getting paid.
And a temptation of that can be, hey, this person hasn't paid me. I know they're at home at 8:30 at night, so I'm going to go knock on their door and ask for that money.
Or I'm going to call them at work. They're dodging me on their cell phone. I'm going to call them at work.
Right.
Or I'm going to do this or do that. And a lot of people don't know there is a ton of laws on that. A ton of laws. You can't call. You can only call them a certain amount of times. You can only call them at certain times of the day. There's a lot of laws on that.
By the way, time is our step 2.
Yep. Yeah. I think we're good. There's a lot of there's a lot of those different things. I don't know them all. That's why I use a third party. Also, those things are ever changing, just like any law.
Right. And they keep up with it.
Regulating it more and more. They have to keep up with it.
It's the same thing that we talk about with the RMLO side. So, Mike and I were fortunate enough to be the guys that actually sat in the room with the commissioner of the SML and the general counsel for the Mortgage Bankers Association, the general counsel for the it was Mortgage Association and Bankers Association actually separately, and then the general counsel for all licensing. And so we were able to talk to these guys. About what's going on. I completely lost my train of thought whenever I talked about the general counsel split up. What the heck? What were we talking about?
RMLO.
Yes, the RMLO side. Thank you. And so that's one of the things that we talked about to them too, and I've preached here. I don't care if you're under the de minimis. Use the RMLO.
Just cover yourself.
Because they're the ones that are spending all of their day figuring this stuff out. I don't think you fully understand. It's one of those functions of you don't know what you know. Like the more you know, the less you know, right? The more you know, the more you realize, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. So we have this tendency to be hustlers, to go out and I'm going to get this freaking done. Why doesn't anybody else
grind on this?
Why are they not grinding to get their payments? Oh, you've got a default rate. Well, I'm going to go get my payment. Well, the reason why other people might not be doing that
is because they know.
It's because they know. Yeah. They know something that you don't, right? So use those servicers. But there is a trap. So we talk about the liabilities of not using the servicer, which we've discussed here. You've got your debt collection practices. You've got the liabilities of somebody suing either your borrower or your seller. Like you said, 90-ish percent, 90+%. It was like the vast majority.
It was a huge majority
of the complaints that went into the Texas SML were all on servicing.
And those servicings were probably correct, but people just don't know and understand what all goes into it.
Here's a prime example. Let's talk about escrow. Right?
Yes.
Escrow is one of those confusing items for people, is that you're going to say, say I'm selling Paul a house, right? And I say, okay, Paul, I need you to come up with 1 year of a prepaid insurance policy. So Paul goes out and gets a 1 year policy. And so that covers him from January to January, right? But then we're going to charge escrow every month, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so the borrower's going to ask, well, why the hell am I paying 1 year and then you're still charging me every month for my escrow? And if you've seen my hoagie example, I give you ways to explain that in a very easily understandable. And if you don't understand that, look for my insurance and escrow video on the Grant Teach Me Something playlist. So you have a picture to draw out to where it does make sense to them. But if you don't have that way, well, that can look really eerily like you're scamming somebody out of money.
Right.
Even though it's totally legit. Yes, you pay 1 year in advance and then you pay every month so that next year we have enough money saved up to pay that. If there's somebody who's maybe less educated, maybe doesn't fully understand what's going on, and they see that and they're mad about something, well, maybe they put in a complaint to the SML that you're screwing them over. I paid for a full year and they're still charging me every month, right?
Well, and then on that same note, you have your 2 months of holdback. You should be doing 2 months of extra escrows. And the reason for that is with what our property taxes are doing right now, I haven't seen any of them going down.
Right.
They're all going way up.
A lot.
They're going to say, well, I gave you 2 months of extra escrows when I bought the house, but you're charging me for every month. What's going on, this and that? Once again, if you're having it written to a third party that's monitored by, the state or at a federal level, if it needs to be monitored at a federal level, people feel much better about that.
Yeah.
I'm not getting screwed.
And the fact that, and this should be your sale period for using, and I'll be clear, you guys know me, I've serviced in-house for years, but I've actually just recently moved all of my notes into servicing for our step 2, which we're about to start talking about. But if somebody were to sue, guess what? These servicers are bonded. And they have essentially an insurance policy ready to absorb that kind of hit. You don't. I don't. I've done a ton of notes. And I don't have a bond for my own servicing that if something were to happen that we, you know what I mean?
Or a misstep on the insurance. That's a big one. I got a call from a guy about 2 months ago. He went to go to a servicing company because his in-house girl missed an insurance deal. And they went to go make a roof claim, and he had to write I think it was like a $14,000 metal roof out of his pocket because he...
To do the right thing.
To do the right
thing.
thing.
For doing the right thing.
Yeah, he did the right thing. He got it all taken care of. But that could have been really bad if the house burnt down or something.
Exactly.
And that's the liability you don't want.
Yeah, that 14 would turn into 80, 100, however much the house.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was all on him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the liability section, right? And there's we could go on and on about liabilities because you can really screw yourself by not knowing what you're doing on the servicing side. Absolutely, positively. If you've done under 40 deals, don't even think twice about it. These are reasonings why we're telling you what would be important about doing the servicing, but don't think twice about it. Use a third-party loan servicer. Now, step 2 is time. The time it takes to service a note is significant. We like to talk about the fact that mortgages aren't tenants' toilets and trash, that you don't have to spend time on it, which in most ways is true. But that collection of that payment, that keeping track of the amortization schedules, that keeping track of not only your incoming lien, but the outgoing lien and the escrow reserves and all that kind of stuff, that takes time. What about escrow analysis?
So that goes into, let's do time and money.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the time on the escrow analysis. If you have 2 notes or something and you're trying to do it on Excel, then there's a late or there's this or that, and you have to try to go figure it out. And what's their payment supposed to be? And they had a late, and then they gave me $3 extra principal.
Right.
You got to go work that in. And that's probably where a lot of those lawsuits and liabilities we talk about come from. But that's also a lot of time into those. So then you say, okay, well, I'm going to buy a computer program that does all of this for me. So the wild thing is it goes from an okay one, and I say okay very loosely. It's $700 a year.
Yeah.
The jump from the okay one very loosely
To an acceptable one?
to an acceptable one is $700 to $25,000. So
I've spent it.
So that $25,000 program will do anything and everything you could ever want to do. But how many notes do you have to have? So it's not just time; it's money
To justify.
to justify servicing those.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people fail to calculate is what they're worth.
Yeah.
You know, and
Deal maker's time is worth a fortune.
And that's why we outsource to a third party. Is because I know how much I'm worth, and I ain't very good at running Excel.
Well, and here
I don't want to run Excel. I don't want to learn how to use
You want
it.
to be out making deals.
I want to be out making money.
And it doesn't even have to be necessarily so like you might hear that and automatically start trying to put like a monetary value to it. It's not even necessarily what is your time worth in the way of like dollar amount, but even more so when you're team building, when you're building a company, you have to look at your highest and best use.
Yes.
And the highest and best use of everybody on your team. Paul's highest and best use is not sitting behind an Excel spreadsheet.
No.
Paul's highest and best use is going out there making deals happen.
Yeah.
Because Paul is the guy in that organization that can get that done. Mike is the guy in that organization that can get that done. When I look at team building and I look at what's going to happen on my team, and we were actually having this conversation on the way in as part of management and just general company building. When I look at those issues, what I have to look at is I have to say, what is the highest and best use of my time? And then what is everything else that's asking my time of me? And all of those things need to be outsourced, whether internally or externally, right? And if you don't have the internal staff that can do this at the snap of a thumb, then you need to outsource that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I know a ton of guys. It goes down to time, not just if you don't have a staff. I know a ton of guys that do 100 or more a year, and they still want the servicing,
Right?
Because they got to train the staff, and then this staffer leaves, they got to train that. I mean, it still
Well,
comes
and it
down
goes
to
back
time,
to point
even
one with liability too.
Yeah, and then you got a new person you're having to teach, but it goes back to time. Even if you have a staff to keep redoing that staff, I don't know that there's ever a point where it's truly worth it because of time and money.
Right. Yeah, it does become very difficult to justify that. Now, in fairness,
we're all entrepreneurs and we like control. We've all gotten into this for control.
Freak, yeah.
So all of us like, well, I want to. These are my notes, and I'm going to take care of them, and I want to know exactly what's going on when. But once you do that release, it changes everything.
And that leads into the third point, right? Is having that control. We want that control because we're worried about getting with somebody that sucks, right? We need the control until we can find somebody that's truly a partner with us. And I'm talking generally, right? So
and Paul's used a couple different ones, correct?
Oh yeah. We've been through 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
And we have one that we really love right now. But it's just like anything. Finding a good attorney. Don't settle on the first one that you find. You have to vet them. You have to.
And then don't stick it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you get in and you're like, okay, well, I've put 5 notes with them and we're having a little bit of trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's put 5 more and see if it goes any better.
No, it ain't. It's you're gonna have issues.
Yeah.
So you gotta vet who you go with, and you gotta be happy with them, and you gotta educate yourself a little bit too to know what you need and what you expect from that.
So there's a lot of things that I expect out of a loan servicer, and there's a lot of big ones because there's a lot of we're out of San Antonio. There's a lot of little mom and pop servicers. When I say little mom and pop, 1 and 2 person shows who have under 100 notes, under a couple hundred notes. What I've seen with them is some of them will not have online payments. Mm-hmm. Some of them won't have another way of paying, so pay cards and things like that. They won't have online access to monitor your stuff. What that tells me is they haven't invested into really good software yet.
Right.
Like we just talked about, the $25,000 software. For me, when I pick somebody, they got to have all of the above. Online payments, they got to be really tech savvy and have everything ready because I want to pull up all my notes and go through everything. And that software has everything you could possibly need to know about your note.
Right.
And I want to be able to click of a button, pull that up, and go through it.
Absolutely.
So that's the first thing I look for. And how good are they?
What are their technologies? Yeah. What are they going to be able to provide for you?
Mm-hmm.
Before we keep going on this, I do want to take a second to just kind of step back and introduce you guys. Y'all are watching this because Propelio has put a lot of time and effort into putting things in front of you, right? Mm-hmm. If you appreciate what you're getting out of this education, where else are you going to be learning from guys that have hundreds and hundreds of notes in each of their portfolios, giving you real insights to why they might make a decision, right? It's one thing to learn about the theory behind. It's another thing to talk to the guys that are actually doing it on a large scale, who have been doing it on a large scale for a long time. And without Propelio putting the time and frankly money into presenting this stuff to you, it wouldn't be available to you. So definitely take a minute. If you're not a member of Propelio, go to Propelio.com. They've got a free trial. You can get websites. You can get your CRM on there, and leads. Leads are huge on there. They got really good leads to the point that I was, freaking Daniel Moore is the guy that is a co-founder of this. When he told me the leads that he's putting on there, I'm like, dude, those are our leads. Like, what are you freaking doing? Those are the ones that we buy.
Well, and I've been blown away with their communication.
Yeah.
Super blown away with, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or I want to know about. Man, it's like.
Yeah, they're
on
right
top
on
of it.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic
so
experience.
Check that out. Similarly, if you like the way that I train, if you like how these Grant Teach Me Something episodes go, check me out at creativecashflow.com. As a member of Creative Cashflow, you get every Monday night I do a Q&A for all of my members. that you can just come in and just pick my brain for a while, and we will do a live video like this. I can weatherman mode on my iPad where it's from this studio right here, and I just answer all the questions that you have. Again, getting frontline access to somebody who's been there and done that, who can help you go through these things. And guys, the cool thing about that is like I'm totally leveraging knowing you guys when I say this, because like you're getting, you know, maybe you can't call a Paul or a Mike up and just ask them a question, right? But I can. And if you've got access to me on every Monday night, and I've got access to all the greatest brains in the industry, that's only beneficial to you.
Well, and it's all in who you know in this industry.
It is.
You know, you hear that saying all the time, but it truly is. If you don't know somebody, you call Grant. Grant probably knows somebody, you know?
Sure.
And so getting that answer and getting the right answer is a lot easier when you know somebody that's got that kind of network.
Right, absolutely. So make sure that you become part of your community, whatever that is, and help other people out. You know, always keeping in mind that we're in this together. We need to build each other up. We're in a very unique time in this industry where technologies are allowing us to do cool stuff like this, like these videos that weren't available 5, 6, 10 years ago, right?
When you and I got in,
there was no information.
YouTube seller financing, it was like one video and it was some guy in his basement, you know. Now anything you want to know about this stuff is accessible. It's really, really neat what technology's done for this.
So try and use that too to give back. If you're a part of Facebook groups, share these videos out. If you've got somebody that you think might benefit from this, hit them in a direct message, give them a link, that kind of stuff. That helps us out, frankly. Another thing that helps us out is like do the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, that kind of stuff. Reward us for the time and effort that we're putting in to make sure that we can build you up. That helps build us up, and that's that kind of reciprocation that we can only hope for, right? So back into the servicing side. So we've touched on the liabilities, we've touched on the time. We're talking about choosing your servicer. I think technologies are a big part of that. I think another part about choosing a good servicer is who freaking knows what they're doing in this industry. You know, it's one of the reasons. So I founded a company called Texas Pride Lending several years ago for an RMLO service, and we took over the industry. We became the largest RMLO service in the nation within under 2 years. And a big part of that was because I started as an owner financer. I was a guy who was doing the owner financing notes. So whenever I needed to create that RMLO service, I knew how to look at it, right? Because I was looking at it from your seat. Look for that in your servicer too. If your servicer is not holding a portfolio of notes themselves for their own investment, that's like going to a dentist with bad teeth.
Yeah, and like you said, that was a huge part of your decision.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, massively. Is that we want to make sure that when we're outsourcing to a company that knows our industry,
understands the industry, and is a part of it. You know, we use a servicer that goes to Texas 100. They're a part of our industry. They're part of the fight with us too. You know, another servicer. There's a couple of them there, but if you want them involved in all the industry, not just on the phone sending you a payment.
Right.
So disclosure, I'm using Moat, M-O-A-T. Note servicing. That's who I've transferred over to here. So I recommend that you look into them, but there are other servicers. You can choose other people. There's a lot of people out there. I have tried several of them. Paul has tried several of them. It can be difficult to find somebody who's good. Expect to pay $30-ish to $50-ish a month.
Well, that's another thing that where starting out, I was a big problem in that. You're starting out and you're new, and you're trying to nickel and dime every, hey, that extra $40 a month over 10 times is this much money. Once again, time and money.
Right.
Don't let that $40 get in your way.
Well, and here's a prime example of how we were talking about hustle can get in your way, right? So I've been a proponent of, hey, get 30 or 40 under your belt, then you're making enough money in servicing fees off of these notes that you can afford to pay an employee. Guess what? They consider that a trash fee. Right. If you're servicing your own note and you're charging a servicing fee, that's a no-no. So,
and that's part of what we did. We went to hypothecate a group of notes to a bank, and the bank said, you got to get rid of all these trash fees. Yeah. So we threw them all out. It was about $1,400 a month. So we threw them all out, and then we rolled everything to so that we could get the hypothecation loan.
Right. Can you explain what hypothecation is?
Hypothecating is when you take a group of notes and you take it over to an institution and say, will you take out all my underlying so that it's one note. And so we did that with the bank, and they monitored us and said, you're completely good to go. Everything looks good. You're compliant. You're this, you're that, except for this one thing right here. So we got rid of that $1,400 income, and then we rolled everything over into servicer. Do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Put everything with a servicer.
Yeah.
and don't do it after the fact, okay? You learn as you go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that happens every day. I mean, we spoke about how experienced we all are. I mean, we had a meeting before we came over here this morning. We all learned something. So I mean, do your research, do your due diligence, but always take something from people who have been down that road before.
Right.
And Mike hit the nail on the head. Don't do what I do. Do as I say. So
well, and you've used a number of servicers, and we've tried a couple of different ones out. And the other thing I noticed is you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So I saw some servicers that were $12 and $15 a month. And you're like, okay, well maybe they're. No. There's a reason these other guys charge $35 to $50 to do their job and do it properly. They can't make any money at that lower number.
Yeah.
So it's truly you pay what you get for.
Right.
And if you're creating these notes in a correct way, that's not an expense you should absorb anyway.
Right. The service charge that goes to the buyer. That fee should not be a real concern for you. Is because that buyer. So you create what you need your cash flow to be, and you add the $35 to it. And guess what? It helps the buyer be more comfortable in the transaction too, because they know. Because we ran into this, like the whole reason that this legislation has been popped up and so prominent right now is some guys were screwing people out of Austin. And what they were doing is they were collecting the payment and not paying the underlying mortgages.
And then getting foreclosed on.
And then getting foreclosed on. Well, the end buyer, who's in a subordinate lien position, was making their payments. The innocent person making their payments on time, but they're losing their house because the jerk investor wasn't doing the right thing. If there was a loan servicer in place, that would have never happened because the loan servicer is third party. They've got no dog in the hunt.
Making sure everybody gets what they should get and what they deserve.
Yeah.
And so that's a benefit to the buyer as well. So $35 a month to the buyer for them to know that they can pay online and do all that kind of stuff is going to be very important.
Well, the other thing that does is that $35 a month, if you give it to the server, if you have it on there and the buyer's paying for it, so we didn't really talk about what a junk fee is. If you do that, get that $35 and you're paying a third-party servicer, it's not a junk fee because you're having to pay someone. If you get that $35 fee but you're doing them in-house, that's automatically a junk fee.
Right.
And banks don't like it. You're not going to look good in court doing it. You're not going to, you want to be as above par as possible.
And a lot of decisions that we make, as entrepreneurs, we're going down a new road, and a lot of the times we stop and we come to the meeting table, me and my partner, and we say, okay, how is this going to look like if it hits the newspaper,
which you
or
should.
If we go to court, and we're like, okay, it's not going to look good,
And you got to think like that to have a long-lasting business.
Yeah,
you've got to think like that.
Yeah, right. There's something's going to happen. You do enough of these notes, and you're going to end up at a foreclosure or in front of a judge, and that.
Like Wells Fargo's never been to court,
right? And you got to be able to lay your cards on the table and say, I did everything by the book.
Right.
I'm in business for the long haul. I'm not a fly-by-night guy.
Right.
And the servicer just, takes that weight off your shoulders.
And I'm going to tag onto that for a second just to say, I think that you should have, at the minimum every year, you should kind of have a drive for your company, like a phrase that's really pushing you into the right direction. One of the phrases that we have that is long-lasting, that is just kind of our motto up here that I'm encouraging you guys to take, which is similar to what he's talking about here, is our phrase is, we're going to do the right thing, especially when it's not in our best interest, or especially when it's not in our favor. That, just like this guy, right? This guy that didn't have it's the borrower's responsibility to make sure that houses are insured at the end of the day. But this guy that you mentioned before, who needed to put a new roof on, forked over $14,000 because he felt it was the right thing to do, and that is the right thing to do, especially when it's not in your favor. So there are times where I've had my staff walk in and they ask, what are we going to do? And I can say the words, what are we going to do? And they're always going to say the right thing, especially when it's not in our favor. You should really drive that home with your company, with your staff. Really drive that into your brain, because that's going to help you in court. And it's just the right thing to do.
Well, and if you do the right thing, you're going to get blessed 10 times.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I truly believe that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Before we kind of wrap up here, I do want to also talk about when you're choosing a servicer, one of the things that's so important about when you're choosing that servicer, to choose somebody who actually knows the industry, who holds some notes themselves, is because you need to have a mutual respect with your servicer. They need to understand that it is your job to do certain things, and you need to understand it is their job to do certain things. So for instance, we were talking about this morning, like one of the big things with servicers that a lot of servicers kind of overstep their bounds on because they want to help.
They truly have one job. Get the money in, make sure everything's dispersed the way it's supposed to,
Right.
escrows, underlying, and then investor. So they do those three things and then get their tax stuff out at the right time of year. They make sure everything gets paid. Then we talked about a lot of them are overstepping their bounds as far as, well, I'll negotiate this for you, or maybe negotiate a modification. Let me talk to the seller. As investors, we want to do that. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the example we were talking about, so we had breakfast this morning with Tang, Mr. Tang Nguyen. So you guys know him out there.
Very good time.
Yeah,
good to get to know
he's a
him.
good guy. So, when we were talking about that out there, it's like there may be a borrower that is perpetually late. They're trying to be shady about stuff. They're always trying to get away with something. And so, okay, if they're late
destroying the house
and they're destroying the house, maybe I want that house back. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe I'm done trying with them. But there may be somebody else
in this house that deserves it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But maybe there's somebody else that they put a large down payment on. They've been paying on time. They've always been honest with you. They pick up the phone when you call. They're not making payments. Maybe you really want to try and work hard, extra hard, to make sure that family is taken care of, and you might be a little bit more lenient with them. So having that decision fall on your lap is important too, so that you can make the decisions, right? Consult your attorney. Your servicer is not your attorney. Your servicer is not there to do legal work. They are there to service the loan. Right.
Well, and on the same lines, you as your investor, I check my loans. And we do a weekly update on them. When we have our meeting every week, we do a weekly update on our loans. Who's delinquent? Who's this? Who's that? Some people think that a servicer, like I handed my note off, it's going to get serviced forever. I should get my check. You still, as an investor, want to be very.
You want to have your finger on the pulse.
Exactly. You want to have your finger on your pulse of all your portfolio, because as soon as you take your finger off that pulse, a friend of mine said, nobody's ever going to watch your money like you're going to watch your money.
Nobody cares about it.
So their job is to make sure all the numbers are correct.
Yeah.
But us as investors still need to take control of that situation.
Yeah.
Right. All right, guys. So thank you for joining us. It's a little bit shorter of an episode this week, but it's a very important topic. We really need to focus on the servicing of our notes. Again, I've taught you how to do notes all the way from the beginning here, so you've got insight on the sub 2 and the owner finance free and clear and that kind of stuff. But once you hold it, what do you do with it? And that's the servicing side of it. All right. So choosing that service. Yeah.
Sorry, but
please
this one's been huge for me, and it just came to mind. One thing that I've noticed, I don't sell a lot of my notes, but a lot of people do. One thing that somebody told me is they service everything because they want to be able to get something from a third-party person and say, here's what this note looks like, and there's no possible way any of that could have changed. When you sell that note, you've got a true history from a third-party person.
You got a hard copy.
It's huge,
right?
For selling those notes.
Because I know the note buyers, they're very weary of, and that's another part. It's just the tracking of it. Because when you do try to sell that note, my note buyers are so frustrated with the self-servicers because they got some Excel spreadsheet that's got errors here and there, and just all this stuff is screwed up. So that will help you on your note sale as well. If you're listening to this on the podcast, go click on the description, look at the link that's inside of there. That'll take you to the YouTube page. Drop questions in. If you're watching, drop questions in. We'll be glad to answer them. If you're on Facebook, you can tag me. On YouTube, you can tag me. I'm at CCF Mentors to get a tag on me. This is Mike Powell. This is Paul O'Dwyer. We'll have them tagged in the description as well. Good guys to get to know. It's all about who you know. But yeah, we want to answer questions. We want to be there for you. So if you got questions, pop them in there. So I am so glad to have you guys. It's such a blessing to know you in the first place, and then to have you on here sharing your knowledge with everybody. Is there anything else that you wanted to close out with, or anything that you wanted to say?
Just cover your backside.
Yeah.
And when you keep that in your mind, you're going to do well.
Yeah. Oh, and for anybody that's not a big business yet, start running your business like a big business from the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. My advice to anybody building their business from the start is treat it like you're going to build it and sell it. I think that's the best way for you to mentally switch over from it being a hobby that makes you money to being a business that's going to allow you to have income over a long period of time, that's going to allow you to go on vacation and still get paid, that kind of stuff. Even though you're not going to sell the company, most likely, build it like you're going to sell it. That's going to help you make decisions on how you're building your company.
Right.
Yeah. And I wish I had done it from the beginning.
Yep. We all do. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat place. Same bat channel. All right, thanks for being here. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More houses. Here's Dar and his wife after only 2 weeks of being my mentor student. And here's Brady after paying attention to all our online videos and attending all the live Q&As. You want to buy more houses? 3 steps. Sign up at creativecashflow.com/memberships, watch all the videos, attend the live Q&As, and then send me a photo with you and your sweet, sweet new contracts. creativecashflow.com, helping you buy more houses for one low price of only